So let's talk a little bit about whether or not we feel as if the show used the time wisely, since we just, spent a little time talking about less airtime for the infected, right? So I'm thinking of the WLF, I'm thinking of the Seraphites. In particular, we obviously get a lot of time building Ellie's character throughout the season. We already talked about Abby, but I want to know if we feel as if they gave us enough here in season 2, because I honestly had questions about Isaac. Like, who is he? What's his end game? We don't really get any names for members of the Seraphites.
Right.
So I'm like, okay, you're just two warring factions.
They're pronouns only. So it's like her, okay. Other her, and him.
Yeah. I agree with you, Micah, though, because I just have so many questions. I feel like they spend a lot of time emphasizing what these two groups are capable of doing, but they don't really give us much more aside from that. They don't go into the backstory of why they're at odds. You have to assume that it's like some kind of a belief system that they're at odds with. And there's more questions than there are answers. And especially with especially with the Seraphites, because they introduce them so early on, and then all of a sudden they're all like, you think they're all massacred. Turns out that was just like a little subsection that were out in the woods. You know what I mean? But yeah, like I think that, yeah, for non-game players, it's just, you got to fill in a lot of blanks. And again, presumably they're going to spend more time extrapolating on both of these groups in season 3, but I don't see a reason why they couldn't have done a little bit more of that in season 2. And I guess you could argue that it's because we're following Ellie's point of view, and Ellie doesn't know anything about either of these two groups. So why would you, as somebody following her, know about them either or learn more about them?
Well, here's, I think, going to be 2 points that I want to make, which is that I saw on Twitter somebody have the opinion that there wasn't enough Ellie in this season. And
odd.
No, really though.
Interesting.
Here's what they say. This is
Okay.
_subtxt_ on X. The biggest issue this season was time. 7 episodes, only 3 of which covered Ellie's journey in Seattle. 91 minutes total of Ellie's story on screen. I counted and removed Isaac/Scar scenes. So 91 minutes total. I don't know the math on this because I think there were 4 episodes in Seattle, but this person says that's just a minuscule amount of time for what is nearly a 13-hour journey in game. So to have the opinion that this episode or this season didn't show enough Ellie is really interesting. But also that leads to the question that I want to ask you guys, which is all of the discussion we've had so far tonight has led me to ask this question. Does season 2 stand alone? If there's so much we don't know, if it raises more questions than it answers, and we don't even know what the resolution is going to be, does season 2 stand alone, or do you need the essential context provided in the upcoming season to appreciate literally any one thing about it?
I mean, the upcoming 2 seasons.
Yeah, or whatever.
I kind of going back to what Chelsea was saying about it. Maybe it's the filler season. That doesn't make it any less important, but it provides necessary build up to what's to come. And that's not to say there aren't important moments, but it's more so important in the context of what it's setting up. And like, I mean, there's seasons like that in every show.
Yeah,
so there's nothing wrong with it.
I agree. I definitely think season 1 could stand alone by itself. You could watch season 1 of The Last of Us and never put on season 2 episode 1 and be totally fine. I do think though that when we have the ability to look back on The Last of Us as a entire story, viewers who come at it and have that option to watch season 2 and season 3 back to back will probably feel much more whole than than we do right now.
That's true.
Going back to that tweet
So
where
no,
it's
I don't think it stands alone right now.
Okay, good. Yeah, because like again, everything with the scars was not paid off, or Seraphites. So sorry, I used a pejorative. And everything with the WLF is not paid off this season. So, and we don't even know what their origin is, to what Pam said. So everything by necessity is necessarily set up for something in season 3. And if you remove, like this person did, all of the scenes that set up, all of the Isaac stuff, all of the Seraphite stuff, what are you left with from home? I'll tell you what I think in answer to your question, Micah, about how it used its time. The victors this season were the Jackson folks, specifically Jackson as a community. Huge. Yep. Absolutely a really lovely place to live. I want to go there, buy a postcard, sing a Christmas carol. And character-wise, Ellie and Dina's relationship specifically really flourished. You got, because you had a lot of time where it was just Ellie and Dina, and way more than is in the game, or a bit more, and more heat and more context and more exploration of those two characters, you come away feeling like you really know those characters a lot more. There is an important story reason why they did that, which is good, just to tease something, but that's the success of season 2 for me, is Ellie and Dina's relationship. I don't know that there are a lot of other things I would be so ready to call successes this season, but that's one of them.
See, I love questions and the promise of answers yet to come, or at least the hope for answers yet to come. And then the idea of seeing, like, just looking at the finale episode, the whole convergence thing, as Ellie's escaping in the motorboat that she stole, we see explosions in the background that we're presumably going to get to see sometime next season. We're going to get to see what all that's about, what this whole convergence thing that Isaac is orchestrating against the Seraphites in general. We're going to get to see the other side of Tommy with the sniper, I would think, against WLF, running for their lives against this guy who knows how to use a gun and use it well. And so I don't know. I knew, and I think I won't speak for most people. I knew, obviously, that season 2 was not going to be the end of the story. We were going to get more. I think season 3 was greenlit even before season 2 aired. I might have to check the timeline on that. It was really quick.
Yeah.
And so we knew there was going to be more. And so for me to have questions now that I hope I'm going to get answers for later is like, yes, that's what I want from a TV show, or from
haven't you heard, Chelsea,
a story
that
across time.
Haven't you heard that season 3 is going to be 5 episodes long? And sorry.
So, actually, Eric, I'm so glad you brought that up, because I think we can't have this conversation about the pacing and about, did we actually get enough Ellie? Did we get enough of all these things, without acknowledging the fact that this season was 2 episodes shorter than season 1?
Inexplicably.
7 episodes, whereas season 1 we got 9 episodes. But something occurred to me. Micah, didn't we have a similar observation about season 3 of The White Lotus?
Well, The White Lotus actually got more episodes.
Was it the other way? Okay, never mind. It was
Yeah.
the other
like
way
6
around.
to 8,
Never
I
mind.
think, per season.
But didn't House of the Dragon have less episodes in season 2 than it did in season 1? Or I'm making that up? It
No,
also
I
had a
don't think
horrible
you
ending,
are.
but
Yes, but I
speaking
think,
of like bad endings, but anyway.
Not as bad as Game of Thrones.
I think something for us to be on the lookout for here is like, what is happening to other shows on HBO Max? Like, is The Last of Us the only season that's getting shorted? Because if we look at other shows and we see that the Suits are effectively telling these showrunners, hey, you get 7 episodes and that's it, that's a factor for why the pacing felt the way that it felt.
To just follow up on House of the Dragon, season 1 had 10 episodes, season 2 had 8. So
yeah, yes, now I'm remembering us talking about that and feeling like,
they gave
what
them the White Lotus. That's what happened.
Yeah.
So they gave House of the Dragon and The Last of Us's extra episodes to
Right.
White Lotus.
Something that just occurred to me about the season length in particular is that, like, yes, ideally we would have had at least 3 more episodes this season so that we could then have Seattle Day 1, 2, 3 for Abby now. That would be like chef's kiss. That's what I want. But from a practical standpoint, that would probably have meant at least another year before we got the season. Because while both of their stories take place in Seattle, it's not like they're existing in the same spaces.
Right.
And so that's entirely different locations. It's entirely additional set design. It's just so much extra work. We saw what they did with the football stadium there at the very end. And not that that's a practical location by any stretch of the imagination, but just from a practical standpoint, I think we would have had to wait a lot longer before we got season 2 if they were to give us that extra bit. And not that that's necessarily an excuse. I think maybe there's an argument to be had to have the quote unquote complete story, or at least both sides of what we've gotten so far now or at the end of season 2, and just had to wait longer for it. But it is what it is, I guess.
Yeah.
We'll see.
No, I think that's a really good point. That if they had tried to really complete the Seattle portion of this story in season 2, it would have taken a lot longer for us to get the finished product. And that might have been too much for a single season to try and like fully capture both of their Seattle stories and ultimately get us up to the point that I think players of the game can probably anticipate how season 3 is going to end, just based on how season 2 ended and where we know season 3 is picking up. But yeah, I mean, violence is a cycle. Vengeance is a cycle, and it doesn't stop this season.
Okay, well, that answers the next question. But I'm curious in all of this, where does it leave Ellie, right? So you mentioned, Laura, how there's this vicious cycle that's going on. Joel kills Abby's father, Abby kills Joel, Ellie kills Nora, Owen, and Mel, who is also pregnant, and then Abby kills Jesse and shoots in the direction of Ellie. Question mark. Right. We're left pondering, but that's her intention, right? Like, regardless of what ends up happening, her intention was to shoot Ellie in that moment. So it's like, where does this all end? But more importantly for Ellie, who's like been on this journey now for the entirety of season 2, I mean, it's really, I mean, for me, it was disheartening to watch her make that choice to leave Jesse and to go after Abby, right? Because everything that had built up to that moment, you would think that Ellie would have recognized it was time to go home, right?
That's
even
what she
says
should do
to Dina, but she chooses vengeance. She chooses Joel at the end of the day. Like, that's her choice in that moment, is Joel, right?
Mm-hmm.
I will.
Something really interesting that they mentioned. Sorry, Laura.
No.
Something,
you go ahead.
Something really interesting that they mentioned in this week's episode of the podcast, the official podcast, was comparing Ellie's pursuit of revenge to a drug addiction, and how it's really easy to say, oh, I'm not going to take that hit if it's not there, or I'm not going to take that shot if there's no alcohol to be had. But the second somebody puts it in front of you, it's a lot harder to say no if that's something that you struggle with. And so Ellie, leading up to that moment where she does split off from Jesse, I mean, she's hit a dead end. She doesn't know what wheel, she doesn't know what whale means. And so I believe her when she says, okay, let's go find Tommy so that we can get with Dina and then head back to Jackson. But getting up on that building and seeing there's the wheel, there's the whale right there that she didn't have an answer to until that moment, there's that hit again. It's put in front of her, and it's just all too tempting to pursue. And I mean, that's the story that they were trying to tell this time around, is that revenge is, it eats at your soul. And we see how that ends for Ellie in this season, and it's awful.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, at this point in the story, you are really supposed to be reevaluating what you think of Ellie and if you think she deserves to be saved. If you think that she is capable of being redeemed. Something that I think, and again, I think it can be attributed to the pacing. I, first of all, loved how much they enhanced Dina's character for the show. I thought she was wonderfully portrayed. And I love that we got to see a different side to the Ellie and Dina relationship, because in the game, a lot of that stuff happens off screen, so you don't get to see it. I will say, though, it exposed us to a more jovial side of Ellie for a good chunk of the season. And the character arc from the original story is not one in which Ellie is a jovial character. A really good example is the whole, like, I'm gonna be a dad line. Cute in the show. In the game, Ellie was a huge dick about it and told Dina that she was gonna be a burden.
Wow.
That makes more sense, honestly.
Yeah.
Just like in the context of the world, and also in the context of like what Ellie knows, and that's a little bit more like Cal is Ellie from season 1, I think, before she, her heart grows 2 sizes, or however you want to.
And so I think some of that may have made that shift jarring for people when Ellie does get that hit, right? And I agree. I think vengeance is her drug. When she sees the Ferris wheel and she's like, oh, there it is, and she only
Abby's
has
right
eyes
there
for that, she's right there, I gotta go. It makes it feel jarring because we've seen a more lighthearted Ellie even in some of these Seattle episodes, which are really not in a lighthearted environment.
Yeah, I think they like it. Maybe they just didn't do it well, but I feel like they tried to set that up early on, even in season 2, where like there's this switch that flips when she, like, it really sinks in that Joel is dead, and she goes from like mourning him and being devastated to like, I'll kill you, like I'm going to kill you. And
right.
We see that happen over and over and over again, where she almost like loses her humanity and just goes into this blind rage where all she can see is like a means to an end and extracting revenge. In that sense, like I think that it was really effective that Mel ends up being a byproduct of that, because especially with the way that they expanded, like you were saying, on Ellie and Dina's relationship, all of a sudden, like, she realizes that she's killed somebody that could be a Dina, that is a Dina.
And it's the
Dina
moral
will
line.
get to that point. Yeah.
It's the moral line that Ellie had drawn for herself earlier in the season too. Was like, these people killed children. Like, that's the worst of the worst. And here she has become the worst of the worst.
And it just makes it even more devastating on a number of different levels.
Yeah.
And it mirrors a little bit of her own story, right? Going back to her mother giving birth to her and Marlene being there. And, I'm just thinking about some of the parallels that exist there, right? When, Mel is telling her basically to cut the child out of her, like Ellie's mother was pleading with Marlene to save Ellie's life in that moment. So like those are kind of mirror image moments of each other.
Yeah. And I will say I far preferred the handling of Mel and Owen's deaths in the show. that was an example of one of the things where they kind of tweaked it for the show, and it's different than how it is in the game. And I thought it played so perfectly for the tone of the show.
Yeah,
I would agree with that.
I think, Chelsea, you had mentioned that you watched that scene from the video game, right?
Right. Yeah, I
Prior
refreshed
to our-
myself, and it was much more of an intentional act to kill these two people, which made the revelation that Mel was pregnant that much more difficult, because like Ellie killed her with bloodlust in her eyes, and that wasn't the case here. She was trying to end the cycle of violence to a certain extent outside of her specific quest to kill Abby specifically.
Yeah, I think after Nora, she kind of decided that she doesn't want to maybe kill everyone that was involved and is just going to settle for Abby. And certainly by the time Abby shows up at the theater after she's killed Mel, Owen, and, you know, an unborn child, when Abby shows up, Ellie is pretty much ready to stop the violence, I think. At least that's the impression that you get. The no, wait! Is like,
in that sense, it makes her more evolved than Abby is in that moment, because, you know, it's like, I don't know why Abby wouldn't assume, like, it's like, well, you killed Joel, so why wouldn't she extract revenge? Like, that's what you were doing, so why wouldn't you expect somebody else to do that to you? You know? So there's like, I don't know, to me, it's like, it's so funny to like see her like so appalled by the fact that somebody would dare, because it's like, you know, she did the same thing. So what's the difference?
well,
Can I ask?
just getting,
Sorry.
yeah.
First off, and this obviously may be a lot more clear in the video game, but how the hell did Abby find them?
Yeah, well,
You know, I
see,
forget-
like, this is why we should have seen more Abby. Because
Yeah.
at least we could have seen her like creeping up on
There was
where they were.
I actually
But-
forget this point.
But Jesse
you know
makes
what?
a good point about how easy it was to figure out where they were.
Yeah, Jesse
So if
does
you
talk about
assume
that.
like Abby has military training, then she would
Yeah.
have done something similar
Okay,
to what Jesse
but
did.
still.
But
Listen,
again,
listen,
it's filling in a
Micah,
lot of blanks.
The answer is that show Abby is just that good. She's just that
All
badass.
right, she's good.
See, like
Yeah.
I've been telling you, you don't know what you're dealing with here. Abby's amazing.
Also, I will say Ellie and Dina do talk very loudly when they're outside walking around. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
they're not
Careless.
they're not exactly making it a secret that they're there.
But they do think that they're invincible too, and I think that that's a
Yeah.
dynamic that they set up really early on in season 2, which is that they think
Yes.
they're untouchable and that they're the best and nobody can touch them.
Yeah.
Only to be
Definitely
proven time and time
a
and time
teenage
again.
attitude for sure. Thinking you're invincible.
I feel like that's a bit of a plot hole that, you know, we can let that one slide, but it is a little strange that, and I guess season 3 we'll find out how she got there. So, one final thread I wanted to pull on before we look ahead to season 3, you know, this concept of fatherhood and the fact that there are a lot of father figures that die in this season in particular. Even going back to the end of season 1, we talked about Abby's father, Joel, who, you know, was mentioned as kind of being the chosen father for Ellie. But then we have Owen, who I'm presuming is the father of Mel's child.
Yeah.
And then Jesse, who is the father of Dina's child. And honestly, Jesse, who has taken on a Joel-like role in this season, showing up in all the right moments to save Ellie's ass. Like what is it with our friends Craig and Neil that they want to kill all the father figures?
Is it
I
a
don't know.
commentary about men?
Maybe.
This show's a man-hating show.
I don't know. It's definitely a theme.
Yeah,
I
no,
think-
it is for sure. I mean, it's a lot of it is about the loss of your core in a way, and I think that goes back to something, Chelsea, you were saying in the reaction episode about community and how Joel really was Ellie's community. We see this happen to Joel in season 1 where he loses Sarah, right? She's his community. He loses Tommy too. He doesn't see Tommy for like 20 years after he loses Sarah. So, I think it really is all about that, how any of us would get thrown into a tailspin if we were to go something like that. We wouldn't be ourselves. Like, it's easy to, be high-minded and think that you would do the right thing if you were put in these situations, but who can really say?
All right, well, a few final questions for us to ponder before we wrap up this episode. As we do look ahead to season 3, the question that I feel like is most pressing and is on most people's mind is Ellie
Abby?
dead?
Sorry.
Who's Abby? Yeah. I mean, obviously, we can keep this to the non-video game players, but I would say no.
Yeah, I feel like they can't kill both Abby and Joel.
Ellie, right?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Ellie and Joel. You're right. Yeah. Yeah.
Can you imagine the tailspin it would throw people into if they had played the sound effect from the video game where you die? You know, the sound where it's like that synth sound when your character dies.
No, Laura, I'm sorry. I played the game on light. I've actually
Oh.
never died. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. In the
You're
game.
missing out. But
No.
Can you play as an infected? That would be so
No.
cool.
Oh no, that would be fun though.
There's a
Man, somebody
I'm thinking
mod
of
that.
the multiplayer online modes in the newest version of the game. Mikey, you got to get the game. It's gonna be good.
Well, I played the part 1. I need to get part 2.
Yeah, part 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'll love it.
I feel like we've answered this next question. Is this Abby's story now? At least most of season 3 is going to come from her perspective, it feels like.
Well, I would like to see. I think there's a quote from Craig Mazin, who in the last week or so said something about season 3 could even have more bottle episodes.
What does that mean?
That would be interesting.
That's like ones where they
Drinking
completely
episode?
spend no times. Yeah, it's just Seth in the bar and somebody new comes in and challenges his
That'd be
political
fun.
worldview. No, it's like Cheers and Jackson. But like an episode like Long Time with Bill and Frank. Right.
Okay.
So main character adjacent. You learn a lot about, or if you get like, okay, here's the whole Seraphite WLF conflict backstory that has nothing to do with present day, but is like, there's the episode explaining that. So I assume he means stuff like that. So
you could get like an Isaac episode.
Yeah, like the Isaac, like actually the first 5 minutes of whatever episode it was that show Isaac sort of joining the WLF for the first time was a perfect setup to do exactly that type of episode. I think would have been really cool because you could have gone from that scene to the whole history of the WLF since Isaac joined, which would be a way to tell of all the other stories and interweave them. But yeah, if season 3 has more like the tracks or bottle episodes in addition to having the episodes that, like, there's no reason to say it's Abby's show now because this show has always been bigger than its main 2 characters, I want to say.
Yeah. I mean, I would throw in there too, like, there are Abby-related flashbacks. So flashbacks are a pretty big theme in this story. So I think Abby is going to be center stage for a lot of the season. But I agree. I don't think that's going to be the only thing we get. And I think part of that is, like, this is the season that will be establishing Abby as a key player in this story. So they're going to have to address other aspects of the narrative that haven't been delivered on yet. So it's not just going to be her.
Well, okay. Because I was going to also ask, does that mean we're going to get more of her friends like Nora and Owen and Mel?
Yep.
And she has 2 Disney squirrels that are her friends as well.
It's
that's
very
great.
cute.
She's really a princess.
Not dolphins. I mean, she lives in the aquarium, doesn't she?
Well, yeah, no, I'm sorry. I'm going to take that back. It's a seahorse, and
Today is National Otter Day, by the way. Maybe she has 2 otters.
Thank you for letting us know that.
That's
Yes.
so sweet.
Yeah.
But well, I'm excited to see where her story goes, and then I feel like this is one we can all answer because there's always the possibility that he comes back in some capacity. And this goes to Pam's point earlier about the Pedro Pascal factor. Are we done with Joel?
I assume we are, honestly. I feel like they tried to tie that up in a bow, or at least not set unrealistic expectations for.
He had strong parting words to Ellie.
I wouldn't be surprised if at least once sometime in the future, maybe even in a theoretical season 4, he comes back for some kind of flashback of some kind. But I don't think it's too much of a spoiler to just say that we've pretty much seen all of Joel in the game. Like everything that exists in the game of Joel, we've gotten. And in fact, the scene on the porch is like the ending of the game, if I remember correctly, like the very end of the game. So
I was honestly shocked that they showed us that as early as they did, because I was like, that's the payoff of the whole story.
Right, like that's how the game ends.
Yeah. But no, I tend to agree with you, Chelsea. I think that it is likely that the suits will say you got to get Pedro back here for some more flashback scenes. But obviously that would be the extent of it.
The way I see an in, knowing that they have, as we said, like exhausted many, if not all of the flashbacks, certainly all the ones I can remember of Joel from part 2, is something they did in that flashback episode, which is have young Joel and young Tommy. Now they were very, very young, but since we still have Tommy for the time being, depending on whose gun went off, pointed at who in the finale, if we still have Tommy, there's a very easy way to still have Joel, which is tell a story that is relevant to Tommy's relationship with Joel, or the first years after Sarah's death, where Tommy ends up joining the Fireflies, but have Joel there to disagree with him, something like that. You could easily see those actors being very game to be back for and doing, and it would play into whatever Tommy's doing next. So I do like that idea, because that's not something that the game explores or can explore, because Tommy's not really a playable character, to really get into those types of characters. And while we're on the subject of Joel, just real quick, I was reminded, when at the porch scene that we just mentioned, when Ellie says to Joel, I'm not sure I can forgive you, but I would like to. And it's like that path toward reconciliation. I'm reminded of actually a quote from Maria in season 1, where she tells Ellie, only those that love us can hurt us. And that was I think I wanted to bring up that quote as early as episode 2 of this season. I always kept forgetting, but only those that love us can hurt us is kind of a thesis statement of what Joel did to Ellie, that she's been stewing on this whole time.
Well, you got it in.
I'm so glad that we did this recap. Yeah.
No, I think that puts a perfect bow on everything.
Yeah. Anything else for our look ahead to season 3? Things
New types of infected are possible.
Now,
not to spoil it.
Well,
Yeah.
Can I ask that? I'm interested on that, because new types of infected that are in the game, or new types of infected that they could potentially come up with that aren't in the game.
They set up something that's from the game that they haven't shown us yet in the show.
And we were all gunning for it. At least
Yeah.
I was like, oh
I
man.
was not. I don't care if I never see it.
They're going to do it. They're going to do it.
I don't care.
But they
All
didn't.
right.
They
But
came
there's-
close to doing it.
The
but
threads
they
are
didn't do
there.
it.
There's
my
almost
ceiling
like
is
there's one more thing, one more, I don't want to say type of infected, but there are other implications for a world where infected and humans live in the same world that show up. I mean, this is probably season 4 or 5 stuff at this point, but there's some good stuff coming and ahead for infected. So I like it.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, and the human situation only gets more complicated.
Don't I know it? Well, thanks to all of you. This was a lot of fun, and I'm excited for season 3 of The Last of Us. Of course, we want to thank all of our listeners, and I think we're right around that point of our 1 year anniversary for What the Hype. If we're not there
That's
already,
right.
we're getting there. But I think it's fair to say that we still need your support. So be sure to follow us in your podcast app and leave a review. You can follow us on social media. We're at What the Hype Podcast on TikTok, YouTube, Twitch, and Instagram, and at What the Hype Show on X. Our website is whatthehypepodcast.com. If you want to email us, please do. You can do it about anything. It doesn't have to be just about The Last of Us. You can email us at whatthehypepodcast@gmail.com. And finally, does a friend or family member need some Joel and Ellie in their life? Well, then share this podcast with them and tell them that we're walking through every aspect of pop culture each and every week. And next week, we'll be doing a pop culture pride episode. Right, folks?
That's right. We're going to be going through and talking about our favorite queer characters in pop culture, or formative ones, or ones that made us think differently about our world, and our favorite queer or queer adjacent movies, because queer people are fun. It's nice to talk about them in pop culture. So everyone knows queer people are fun. So tune in for that, and we look very forward to that. Also, I wanted to thank Chelsea for being along with us on this journey, joining the What the Hype studio. We'll have to have Chelsea back. I know that she's game for other pop culture discussions too, but really, Chelsea and I did a podcast called Thank You for Sporing for season 1 of HBO's The Last of Us. And I wanted to thank Chelsea specifically for coming back and sporing with this crew.
Thank you all for having me back. Sorry, Micah. Thank you all for having me. I was glad to continue my discussion with Eric and then have everybody else like there as well. Like, this is super cool. I've enjoyed it and hope to talk to you guys more soon, hopefully.
Yeah. Aren't you a big Avatar The Last Airbender fan too?
I am, yes. Yeah. I actually have an Avatar The Last Airbender podcast
that's a fandom that I haven't posted really want to talk about soon. So we'll
a little bit of a teaser there of what we're going to be covering in the future.
No, I didn't mean to cut you off. What I was going to say was why had we not been using the term sporing the entirety of the? I guess that's borrowing from,
because you would owe me money, Micah.
And the royalties
doesn't come cheap. My brilliant idea doesn't get. Actually, you know what? For about $7.99 a month, which is the server cost that still hosts those old episodes.
Golf clubs?
No, because I don't play golf.
Threat?
Yeah.
I was gonna say it wouldn't probably be super relevant because apart from one episode this season,
spores weren't a part of
it.
Yeah, we actually we misjudged kind of that.
But in the game, it's early on, isn't it? Like you wear the gas mask when you
go like the tutorial
in Boston. Immediately. Yeah.
Well, that's because they didn't want to pay these actors Pedro Pascal money to have to wear gas masks the entire time.
Although Disney did that with his Mandalorian helmet.
Yep.
That's also
very true.
All right. Well, thanks again, everybody, for listening. That is The Hype on The Last of Us, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.